Welcome to Your Exceptional Life, the podcast dedicated to helping you be exceptional in every single area of your life, because if you muck up one of them, there are major consequences right across the board. Happy New Year to you. Marcus Pearce here with you. It has been a long time between drinks, and I'm so excited to have you back on the podcast. As I said, I haven't been on Your Exceptional Life on this particular podcast for almost a year, and I'm absolutely pumped to resume in 2019 with a whole new format, which I'll share with you shortly. But really, I am just jumping out of my skin to share what I have to share with you on this podcast today and for the months and years to come. If you've got no idea who I am, this might be the first time you're listening to the podcast. Welcome to you if that's the case. I don't want to bore you with the details now. I would just suggest head on over to my website, marcuspearce.com.au, click on the About Me page, and you will find out all you need to know if you want to know anything over there. But for those of you that have been with me for a while, I don't want to apologize, that's not the right word, but I ended Your Exceptional Life midway through 2018. It was just proving too difficult to do a weekly podcast in video and in audio, sharing elements of my life and what I'd been learning. It just became exhausting. And so I took a break. And for about 9 or 10 months of 2018, I just let it bubble away, that yearning to share with you all of the things that I want to share with you. But what I also found was that doing 100 Not Out and my other interests, whilst I love all of those interests, nothing quite fills my bucket the way that sharing the principles of living an exceptional life and sharing some of the research in long form detail and being able to connect with you on these 8 areas of life without me interrupting a guest or demo. I can just go on this myself, and you can switch on, you can switch off, you can fast forward, rewind, double speed, half speed, whatever you like. But the feedback I've always got on the principles of living an exceptional life, the way I present it through the blueprint, has always been wonderful. And so I'm always inspired to talk and share more and more about it. And so I really hope you enjoy this, because if you don't, but I've really enjoyed putting this together. And so again, if I've enjoyed it, generally, I'd like to think that you will as well. All right, so as I said, this podcast used to be weekly. From now on, 2019 onwards, it's going to be monthly. And the way I'm going to do it is share with you the thing. I don't want to ever come across as narcissistic. Please, I hope that never comes across that way. But what I'll share with you is the elements of my own personal and professional life that I think are worth talking about, the things that I've sucked at, things that I've won at, things that I've struggled with, things that I've found have worked, that haven't worked, the ups and downs and all that's in between. I won't give you an Insta-famous social media one-sided view of life. I'll definitely tell you about the hard times and the good times. But I'm going to do it monthly as a month in review, except for this episode, because I'm going to share with you more of the ups and downs of 2018 as a whole, of a year in review. But it's not going to be like one of those reports that you get, or one of those elongated Christmas cards you get, where you get every single detail of that person's life as they've shared it with you in the year. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to share with you 8 parts of my 2018, highly abbreviated, but 8 parts that I'd like to think will help you. And at the end of each of those 8 parts, I'm going to throw it over to you. I'm going to ask you a question, which may or may not be relevant to you in your life right now. And if it is relevant, then I invite you to answer it and to act on it. So I'm going to do an episode of Your Exceptional Life every month. I'm going to come into my office, get the lights on, which you can see reflecting in the map of the world I have behind me. You're going to see, I'll share with you the 8 areas of life. And if you're new to the podcast, those 8 areas of an exceptional life are your life purpose or your career, your movement, that is the way you move your body, your social life. Now, those 3 elements are what we know to be essential to a great quantity of life, a great long life. But to really add quality to your life, whether you're 25 or 45 or 65 or 85 or 105, you want to eat well, and that is eating seasonal, local, organic, whole foods most of the time. You want to have great love and relationships. You want to be learning what you love to learn. You want to be saving or spending less than you earn and investing the difference. That's exceptional wealth. And then you want to be really aware. You want to have exceptional spirit. You want to ideally see the world for the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, and see that all of those elements of life make up an exceptional life. And so each episode, I'll go through each of those 8 areas: your career, your movement, your social life, your nutrition, your love and relationships, your growth, your wealth, and your spirit. And then, because monthly is a little bit tricky, so what I'm going to do is the best parts of that episode, or the things that I think are most valuable to people, I will take them out of the big monthly episode and I'll put them in as small weekly episodes. So in every month you'll still have a weekly episode, but it'll be some of the best ones or the best parts of the whole episode, almost like a highlight. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry. If you subscribe to the podcast, if you're on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or however you like to consume your podcasts, head on over to thewellnesscouch.com to check out our entire range of podcasts on the Wellness Couch where this podcast sits. But if you just hit subscribe, then you will be notified every time a new podcast lands and you can have a listen. So, as I said, I don't want to overwhelm you, so I've made bucket loads of notes. So let me just make sure that I get this to you in a form that makes sense. If you know my work, you know that a big part of being exceptional in each of the 8 areas of life is that if you're not, there are major consequences. Give you one example, probably give you 2 or 3 examples, but a great example, which is very common these days, is if you excel in your career, but you don't look after your body, you don't move your body, you don't have time for your friends or your family, you don't look after your diet, then you might have a great career and you might actually have some money. So you might be exceptional in 2 areas, but over a given amount of time, you'll lose your health, you'll lose your relationships, both in your friendship life and in your family life, and you will lose your soul. You will feel like you are a shell of yourself. And so that's just one example of the consequences of being exceptional in one but not in another. And for all of us, either myself and you guys listening or watching, there are going to be areas, at any time in life, there are going to be areas of your life that you want to improve. I will call those areas, for want of a better term, mediocre. Now some people go, why do you say mediocre? I say mediocre because when you use a term like that, ideally it makes you want to change it, because you definitely don't want to improve things that are necessarily already awesome or exceptional. You tend to want to make a difference in your life or improve something when you find it is not good enough. So I could replace the word mediocre with not good enough for you. And every one of us has a different standard on what is good enough and what isn't good enough. A great example of that is money. Some people earning 100 grand a year is the bee's knees. For other people, that's not good enough and they want to earn 200. And for some people, they earn 500 grand a year and that's not good enough and they want to earn $1 million. It doesn't really matter. The key is understanding what is good enough for you, what is exceptional, and then what is mediocre. And so what you'll find is a lot of my philosophy is on you must have a commitment to wanting to improve each area of your life, because if you only put all of your eggs in 1 or 2 baskets, if you're a parent and maybe you're a full-time parent, or we're all kind of full-time parents, aren't we? But if you're a stay-at-home mum or dad and you've put all of your eggs into that basket, that identity, then you will lose yourself, whether it's with your friends, whether it's a relationship with yourself, the relationship with your body, the relationship with money. I know so many stay-at-home parents that struggle to value either buying things for themselves or working and knowing what their worth is, because their identity's been wrapped up in themselves as a parent. And so I'm very big on this philosophy of owning each of the 8 areas of your life and not indoctrinating yourself in a belief that is dependent on excelling in just one area. That's great, but honestly, if you get to the end of your life having excelled in one area, people will actually bemoan the fact that you suffered in other areas of your life, and that's what we don't want. And so that's the philosophy that I want you to adopt. Again, if you know my stuff, you already know this, but if you're new to this philosophy, that's the philosophy I'd love you to adopt in 2019 and beyond. So the exceptional 2018, and all of us had an exceptional 2018. Some of us call it bad, some of us call it tough, some of us call it the best, but exceptional as a definition is something that is very rare, and the 2018 that you had, it's not just very rare, it'll never happen again the way that it did. And so I'm going to share with you the ups and downs of my 2018, not just what happened in my life, but some of the things that I learned. I love to read. I've got some books here that I read in 2018. I've got some books that I'll be reading in 2019, a couple of books here that I'm reading at the moment, but I'll be sharing with you books, movies, lessons from mistakes or challenges, so on and so forth, in each of the 8 areas of life. So let's get started. area number one, the foundation of your exceptional life is your life purpose, your career. Really, if you want to even oversimplify it, your 9 to 5, that is oversimplifying it because your life purpose is more than just your 9 to 5. But a big part of my 2018 was 2 commitments. And the first one was born out of a frustration or a realization that I am not solely cut out to excel only in this online space or this digital space. In the years 2016 and 2017, I'd probably overindulged in attempting to excel as an online entrepreneur. I have an online program called the Exceptional Life Blueprint and a number of other online programs, and I'd really gone hard on online marketing, on emailing people, on essentially saying emailing people, buy my stuff, Facebook advertising, learn my stuff, then buy my stuff, and websites and all the rest of it. I got so tired, even just talking about it now, I want to go, I just want to go to bed. And so at the end of 2017, I was like, you know what, stuff it. I'm going to build my business the old-fashioned way. And for me, the old-fashioned way was speaking. And so there's 2 ways I love to speak. Through podcasts, which you're listening to. If you're watching it, it's still a podcast, more just like some people call it a vlogcast or a video. But for me, it's speaking from the stage and speaking like I am now. Writing is something I can do. I'm a journalist by profession. It's something I can do, but it's not it doesn't fill me up. And so speaking for me is what I love to do. And so in 2018, it was build my business the old-fashioned way. That was through speaking. And I'll come back to that in a moment. The second major commitment was that as a result of that, I was done working nights. I've got 3 kids. We have a 4th child on the way coming in July this year, 2019. And I was not enjoying working at night. I was enjoying some of the work that I was doing. I was hosting webinars and I was doing mentoring calls and making a difference in people's lives. And I liked putting it together. But then I was missing out on time with my wife. I wasn't having the same level of rest time that I would like to. And I just found after a number of years doing it that it just wasn't doing it for me anymore. And so I made a really conscious decision that nighttime was just going to be quiet time. Like we often learn in this health and wellness world, the nighttime is the down ramp. It's the time where you come off the adrenaline from the day, you relax, you just take it easy. And I hadn't been taking it easy all that much at night. And so 2018 was, build my business the old-fashioned way, largely through speaking and events, and stop working at night. And so I loved it. That was probably one of the best decisions I made. And some of the things that I did at night was spent more time with Sarah, which was just wonderful. We've always had a good ritual around the evenings, which is just have a cup of tea or Sarah's homemade Baileys, which is divine, and mainly in summer. Sit on the couch and just chat, just digest the day. They don't have to be deep and meaningful, but just chat. We did more of that in 2018, which I loved. A couple of other things was I actually watched more movies, which is a real guilty indulgence for me. It's not something that I've grown up going as a movie buff. I used to think when I first met Sarah, I used to think movies were a waste of time. So I'll tell you more about that a little bit later when I'll talk about the great movies that I watched in 2018 when I talk about the growth section. But I did use the nighttime to watch some movies, particularly movies that I hadn't watched that everyone else has watched. And again, I'll share with you some of those movies and you'll say, you haven't watched that? I'll share with you some of those movies in the growth section. What else did I do? I read more. Now again, this for me is a really big part of my work, but I find it difficult to read in the day, and so I found that I wasn't reading as much because I was doing more work, whereas for me this is being more work. This is being, I just love reading, and I love reading books, not ebooks. And so I read a lot more books. I read 20 odd books in 2018. And what else did I do? I did just again to make this real. I did spend some nights on the couch, on my phone, absorbing AFL media content, watching my beloved Melbourne Demons or watching the highlights of some of the football shows, and that was sometimes my nights on my downtime as well. And so that for me was a big deal, not working at night. And so again, it's a question I invite you. What are your night times like? What is your nighttime ritual, your evening ritual? Once the kids are asleep, now a large element of mine. I'll share with you other elements because there were other things that I did in my evenings to help me get on that down ramp to then improve my sleep and the rest, which doesn't need much improvement because I'm a great sleeper. But I will share elements of that nighttime ritual on future podcasts because there's quite a few things I like to do at night. Not all on the same night, but just to have tools in the toolbox, so to speak. But again, the first thing I said was that I wanted to go back to running my business the old-fashioned way, which in 2018 was an unpopular thing by society's terms because everyone's doing online stuff these days, and I really wanted to do less of it. So I essentially stopped selling any online content. I've got it there to sell, but now that I've taken it, essentially I've stopped selling it. I now want to make it a bit better before I bring it back on the market, so to speak. But I just started running a lot more of my own events in 2018. And so if you don't know me well yet, I run a podcast network called The Wellness Couch. And through The Wellness Couch, we did another 4 events in 2018. So in 2018, I hosted 9 of my own events. There were 4 of these one-day events called the Wellness Base Camp, which we did in, where did we go? Bendigo, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Kiama. I brought back the Wellness Summit, which is a 2-day event that we hold with the Wellness Couch, and that was in Melbourne in August. I ran an event with Bronnie Ware and 2 other wonderful ladies, Carly Nimmo and Shara Carruthers, here in Byron, called One Day in Byron Bay. I did my 10-day longevity experience over in Ikaria, which is the Greek island known as the island where people forget to die. If you love your aging well longevity stuff, again, I highly recommend. I'm biased, of course, but head on over to 100 Not Out and listen to that podcast with myself and Damien Christoph. So I did all of those events, and then I did about 15 to 20 other what I call third-party engagements, where I get asked to speak for a company or MC an event. I did some great work with Go Vita, who I also host a podcast for. Go Vita Health Food Stores. The Complementary Medicines Australia had their annual conference. I did some work with Positive Real Estate, who are a wonderful real estate investment and education company based here in Australia. Many other talks, some other real estate companies and the rest. But doing my own events and then being asked to speak was just a great way to fill up my bucket. That's what I love to do. I'm a people person. I'm an extrovert, in case you can't tell. So I like real life communication. This is great, but this is a silver medal. Gold medal for me is meeting you in person and talking to you properly. Silver medal is podcasts and videos and digital communication. But what I found was living my life this way, even though it was a calculated risk, it, without any shadow of a doubt, made me a better husband, made me a better dad, made me a better son, brother, friend, community member. All of those things gave me a better relationship with myself because I was spending more time doing what I loved and doing the things that I love to do. And so the question that I have for you is, how well are you spending your 9 to 5? Is it the way that you love to spend your time? If the answer is no, you've always got 2 options. Whenever something isn't the way you want it to be, there's always 2 options. You can either change your behavior, so you can change your work, you can change what you're doing, you can change the way that you're doing it, or you can change your belief around that part of your life. So for me, I changed my belief in terms of, laptop lifestyle, working 24/7 or work the hours that I choose. Was like, no, I don't work. Well, the hours that I choose are not night times. I made a real change in my beliefs that it wasn't that I wasn't getting ahead of the game. I wasn't it wasn't the best thing to do. I really had to change my belief around night times, particularly because I'm a bit of a night owl. I do love the night times. And so if you love the night times and you love to be productive, then you would tend to love to work at night. But I found being productive through learning rather than doing a far better use of my time. And so whatever you do, I think it's really important to recognize that any of those decisions, and again, I don't intend to sound like I'm trying to blow smoke up my backside, but those big decisions, they do take courage, they do take trust, they do take some level of intuition. I do find that I'm quite intuitive. I love listening to an inner voice, even if it freaks me out or if it feels risky. But if it feels risky for me, that's kind of what I like to do. If it gets me a little bit scared, a little bit nervous, then often that's what I am destined to do. So that is life purpose. Now let's move on to movement. Movement, if I'm completely honest, movement in 2018 I sucked at. I really did suck at. It was the first statement that came to mind when I was taking notes for this, was I sucked at movement in 2018. It was such a year of struggleville, is the way that I've described it. And I'm not going to harp on it for too long, but I'll give you a little bit of couple of the reasons why I think that is. But for me, the highlight of movement was Sarah and I took the kids to Europe for 6 weeks, and Europe on foot is absolutely wonderful. And when you've got kids, sometimes the temptation is not to do it on foot, but I love walking. It's one thing that I realize that I love to do. I don't love it from an exercise perspective. If you said, how would you like to build your aerobic fitness? It's not going to be through walking, but hiking, yes, we did some wonderful hikes in Ikaria. Absolutely loved that during the trip. London by foot, Paris by foot. Sarah and I lived in Donegal for 12 months, which is a little Donegal town in Ireland, northwest of Ireland. We went back there and visited our friends, and now our kids have friends for life there in County Donegal. That's a wonderful place to explore by foot. But it just got me, reminded me how grateful I am to have 2 feet, no matter how flat those feet might be. But also just the importance of walking, because as you can see, I've got a stand-up desk here, thanks to our good friends at Movi Workspace. But what I found was that not having a stand-up desk, I was sitting a lot and I wasn't walking much. And with these wonderful iPhones that we have, or any smartphone, I'm sure, you can really easily see how many steps you're taking each day, or you might have a Fitbit or some type of smart device where you can see how much you're moving. And I was sucking at moving. Some days I was doing like 2,000 steps a day. And I was like, that is Suckville. That was really average. And so what I'd also noticed is my right hip had started to become more and more chronic. So back in 2010, I fell off my bike when I was training for an Ironman triathlon really quite badly, and I broke this shoulder and dislocated this shoulder, and I cracked the humeral head, and it was really quite ugly. But ever since then, I've had a really, not sore's not the right word, but I had a lot of discomfort in my right hip. And so then I found that my right knee had started to become sore, my right sacroiliac joint, and my wife's a chiropractor, so you can I was probably the worst patient ever, going, I'm sore here and I'm sore there. But I do see a wonderful chiropractor in Byron Bay, Margaret Tay, because with 3 kids, I don't like putting that pressure on my wife to adjust me regularly. So I see Margaret regularly and love my adjustments. But what I found was that with all of the stuff that I thought that I was doing, I wasn't actually improving all of that much. And so I came to the conclusion that I actually pretty much suck at compliance. So if you've seen a PT or a doctor or a chiro or a physio or any type of health practitioner or a naturopath, and they give you homework, whether it's buy supplements, do rehab exercises, take medication, do this, that, or the other, meditate for 30 minutes a day, whatever it is, I don't really do that well at it, because I reflected on my year, and Margaret's given me all of these recommendations, and Sarah's given me recommendations, and even Damo's told me to do this, that, and the other, and I just didn't really do it very well. And the only person responsible for that is me. And it's one of the really key parts of movement, is no one can move for you. You can't outsource it. And so in 2019, as a result of all of these insights, there's 3 things that I'm doing. First one is spin. I got myself a spin bike. I got it just towards the end of 2018. Running was becoming difficult with this right knee. I love to ride. I sold my road bike earlier this year. I'll talk about that in the wealth section when I talk about the Barefoot Investor. But I sold my road bike and bought myself a spin bike, and that gets a sweat up. And that's what I was craving. When I wasn't running because of this knee, I wasn't sweating. And so I know how much better I am and how much better my energy is when I'm sweating. And so I got myself a spin bike. So 2019 is the year of the spin, 3 days a week. Not only am I committed to rehab, but I'm committed to actually being more diverse with my practitioners. So I've always been very much, I don't want to sound extreme, but I've got a lot of faith in chiropractic, put it that way. And so I've always often seen a chiropractor and then kind of looked after myself in all other elements of health. But now in 2019, there's some other practitioners that I want to see. Being up here in Byron Bay or in the Northern Rivers region, there are there's no shortage of practitioners. And so there's a number of great practitioners which I haven't seen for varied reasons, but now I'm determined to see them. I've already got a booking, an appointment booked in for this Friday, a couple of days, which I'm very excited about. And so I won't tell you about them as I go along, because in the health and wellness world, to be frank, I just can't be bothered with the judgment because health and wellness has become very judgmental. So what I will do is I will share it with you after the fact. And that's what I'll be doing in these monthly podcasts. I will in February I will release a podcast reviewing January, and I will let you know how I'm going in certain things, particularly in this one. And then I have committed to 1 session of yoga per week because I really love yoga, but I don't love it so much that I ever want to be a yogi, not at this point of my life, but I know it's really important, and flexibility for me is pretty much my weakness. In terms of my strengths, it'd be aerobic first, anaerobic second, flexibility third. So you could argue that I really should go and do yoga every single day, but we don't do our shoulds, do we? And so I am doing yoga once a week. It's likely going to be every Friday morning. I'm a massive fan of yoga with Adrian. Having said that, yesterday, it was Tuesday, and I did a yoga with Adrian session yesterday. I'll put in the show notes what workout I did, or yoga, what do you call it? Yoga workout? Yoga session? Yoga class? Anyway, it was on YouTube. So my question for you is, what are your favourite ways to move? Because I had to pivot and swerve around running, which I love, and a few other ways to move, which I love, that I'm not doing right now. I did a push-up challenge last year, and I really hurt my pecs. I did too many push-ups and not enough other things. But the thing about movement is, how do you love to move? What are the ways that you love to move? And that's the big question for 2019. How do you love to move? And then, are you moving that way in 2019? If you're not, make it a part of your 2019, because I guarantee you, when you move, not only is your life more vital, but you're doing so much to prevent major disease, dementia being the big one. I probably mention that every time I talk about movement, but movement is absolutely key to living your exceptional life. All right, it's 2 sections down, 3 to go. Did I just say 3 to go? We have 6 to go. So I'm getting excited. This is 3 of 3. This is 3 of 3 when we're talking about quantity of life. A great long life, your great career, great movement, and a great social life. And so for me, 2018 was a very social year, but I would tend to say my years are quite social because I am an extrovert. But what I become more and more conscious of is spending quality time with quality people. And so for me, one of the things that Sarah loves is that I still have great relationships with my schoolmates. So even just at Christmas time, we went down to Melbourne, the whole family, for Christmas. And when I go to Melbourne by myself for work, I'll often see my schoolmates maybe 3 or 4 times a year. But there's always a couple of people that can't make it. We rarely see the partners, and we never see the kids because we're normally catching up for dinner. And so I called my mates and said, if we can, let's do something around Christmas. And so it was December 22, 3 days before Christmas. All of my 8 mates were able to get there, partners if relevant, and kids if relevant. They were all there, and it was a wonderful day. Yes, it was frantic, and there's some of, kids, I'm hungry, or I fell over and I kicked the football over the fence and all that stuff. But gee whiz, it was fun. It's so good to see people that, I realise this is my 20-year school reunion this year, and then you realise I've got mates that I've known since I was 5. So over 30 years, which makes me feel, I don't want to say old because I love being old, but I'm happy to say it makes me feel much older than I think I am, put it that way. 30 years sounds like a long time, said the 37-year-old. But anyway, so I think the question around social, and this is just a short section, but the question around social is, you become who you hang around. So who are you hanging around? And how do they make you feel? If the people that you are hanging around, and I always recommend writing down 5 people and giving them the 5 people you spend the most time with, and give them a tick or a cross. Give them a tick if they make you feel great. Give them a cross if they don't bring out the best in you. And those crosses become part of your 2019 goals. Those crosses become the people that you replace on your top 5 list. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to be banished from your life, but they just move down the charts. They go down to 8, 9, 10, 20, 50, particularly if they're really, really super toxic. Now, I could get all deep and meaningful, and we could start talking about family relationships. When I talk about social, it's really human beings. So it could be family, it could be friends, it could be work colleagues. It's the people that you spend the most time with, and that could be a mixture of your 2-year-old son and your boss and a work colleague and your husband or wife and your sister and whoever it is. But you must spend time with people that you love spending time with. And if you don't, you've really got to do something about it. And that's hard. That's really hard. Don't get me wrong. But it's so important. So important for your mental health. So important for as you get older. You don't want to have social isolation as you get older. And you really want to have good people around you as you get older. And more than anything, you don't want to be saying to yourself, I don't have time to socialize in 2019. It's make the time. Make it a priority. Don't put it down the list. So that's social. All right, let's move into quality of life. This one is nutrition. Now, this is not going to sound like a nutritional goal, but it is. I had a goal at the beginning of 2018 to have 0 fillings in my teeth because I have had so many fillings. I don't even care to count. Lots. Every single tooth has had a filling on it. I'm 99% sure I asked my dentist that during the year, and he said yes. And he showed me the x-rays, and every tooth has a filling on it. But for me, it was a big deal to not have a filling in 2018, and I achieved it. Woohoo! It was literally exciting. I grew up, when I was born, my parents owned a milk bar, and then my dad had news agencies, and so I have had easy access to confectionery all throughout my early years. And then add on top the fact that I grew up in a very typical Australian household, the standard Australian diet or the sad diet, you know, so it was always Milky Way soft drink, you know, mint slices, peppermint crisps, Mars bars. Anyway, so 2019, it's just continuity goal, baby. If I can get through this year with no fillings, man, oh man, that would be massive. No fillings in 2 years. But for you, it probably wasn't about your fillings. And so if we're going to talk about food for a moment, one thing which I'm constantly talking about in my presentations, and it's something I'm very mindful of, is that it's not so much what you eat, even though that is important. It is how you eat. How you eat is far more important than what you eat. And if I'm going to get really morbid for a moment, look at some of the leaders that have focused on what to eat, and they're not here anymore. Robert Atkins, founder of the Atkins diet, was gone at 72. Nathan Pritikin, is it Nathan Pritikin? He had a brother as well. I often get their names confused. But the founder of Pritikin, he killed himself at 69 when he found out that he had cancer. Some suggestions were that it wasn't good for his image, and he was gone at 69. Adele Davis, she died at 70. She was a very well-known nutritionist in America. She had cancer. Michael Montagnac, he was the brains behind the South Beach diet. He died of prostate cancer at 66. So that's just 4, you know, and there are many, many more. And so if what we ate was the most important thing, then the leaders of that, the proponents of that, really should be living the greatest, longest lives. But that's not the case. The people that live the greatest, longest lives are those that master the art of how to eat. And there are 2 elements which I'm going to share with you in mastering the art of how to eat in 2019. One of them is, how long does it take you to eat? Are you a slow or a fast eater? If you are a fast eater, I highly recommend you become a slower eater. Some ways around that: chew your food 40 times. Some people go, that's disgusting. Well, then maybe chew it 30 times. But chewing your food more will make it not just easier in here, but it will also make it easier when you go to the toilet as well. So chew your food more. And you know what? Eat with other people. Eat with others. Don't eat alone. Yes, there'll be times when you eat alone, but most of the time, do your best to eat with other people, because when you eat with other people, you talk with other people. And when you talk with other people, you eat less because you're talking. And so give that a shot. There are 2 ways. There are a number of other ways that you can improve the way that you eat in 2018, but eating is an art. It's not just what you eat, it's how you eat. It is an art. Make it your masterpiece in 2019. Hope you're enjoying the return episode of Your Exceptional Life. Now, quick announcement to let you know that my signature event, Exceptional Life Blueprint Live, returns to Byron Bay in 2019, something I am very excited about. If you're looking to make major transformations in any of the 8 areas of life, then you're cordially invited to join me. ELB Live is 2 jam-packed days in the heart of Byron with myself and 100 plus like-minded souls, all determined to live their exceptional life. This all happens on Saturday, May 18 and Sunday, May 19 this year. On the Saturday, you'll create your own blueprints for an exceptional life purpose, movement, social life, and nutrition. And then on Sunday, you create exceptional blueprints for your family life, growth, wealth, and spirit. Not only that, we all go out for dinner together on the Saturday night. And of course, we enjoy the local surrounds of the idyllic Byron Bay. To find out more, head on over to marcuspearce.com.au/Byron Bay. That's marcuspearce.com.au/Byron Bay. Okay, back to the episode. All right, love and relationships. Now there were some challenges, but I have here that there were 3 big family highlights in 2018, and the first one, which again I mentioned earlier at the beginning, was finding out we're having another baby. Now, yes, it was planned. Yes, we've always wanted 4. When Sarah and I met, I wanted 8 kids. She said, that's crazy. My mum's one of 15, so I really love the idea of big families. We negotiated, settled on 4 labours, and so, touch wood, we've had 3 very happy, healthy births and children born into this world. 4th one is coming in July. So that's obviously very exciting. It makes you very uncertain, I must admit. It feels like we're having a first child in many ways, because 4 is, it feels like a new world. And so I am finding myself asking and talking to people that have 4 children what it's like having 4 children, because it's not just some of the things in terms of what is it, you know, you'll need a brand new car, but it also opens up things about home, our home life. How will that change? We're going to need a bigger home. We have 2 of us and 4 of them, so how does that work in being able to give them attention? How does that work with my work life? Sarah's stay-at-home mum. We're definitely going to need some helping hands in 2019, so if you're ever in town and you want to come over for a visit, let me know and I'll give you the kids for a little while as well. But they're the things, you know, with 3 we can manage 99% of the time. The other time we're losing our marbles, but 4 just makes me go, oh, holy moly. So there is some uncertainty. I have no doubt about that. Look, people go, what about financial uncertainty? I have a belief that you always work it out. You know, we are rife with financial uncertainty, both in my family, but also in the world that we live in. Find me someone that isn't rife with financial challenge, and that can be the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor and everyone in between. It's just a part of life. Like all of these other areas are just a part of life. So that's a big highlight. Number 2 was our trip to Europe. Now, again, I'm not going to overbake this because a lot of people go, oh my gosh, you went to Europe, how amazing. Look, Europe was wonderful, but let me just be super clear here. Europe was parenting with 3 children every day for 42 days. From the moment you go to bed, wake up to the moment you go to bed, in foreign countries, learning languages and transport, and I'm hungry and I want to go to the toilet, and you've just been to the toilet and you can't find a toilet, and all the bits and pieces. So yes, it was wonderful, but as I like to remind people, you see some of the photos on Instagram of our trip to Europe, and there's a photo, I think you'll see it up here, there's a photo of Sarah and the kids in a sunflower field. It's the biggest and most beautiful sunflower field I've ever seen, but driving past it wasn't good enough. We had to actually go and get a photo of it, and then Sarah got there and says, I don't want a photo in front of it, I want a photo in it. And then so she wanted to get into the sunflower field, and then in the process of doing that, there was like what's a group of bees called? A swarm of bees. One of the kids got stung by a bee. There's some prickly bits on the ground. It's all awkward. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm the photographer, and you see a photo where they've held it together for just that little bit. Tommy had lost it. He wanted booby juice. He's still on the boob. You know, Maya wanted it to be about her. Darby got stung by a bee. Anyway, it was just one of those. And then people go, that photo was amazing, and it was a great photo, but it was not indicative of the experience. And so for me, the trip to Europe, the highlight wasn't just the highlight for me was that it sowed seeds for our children and our family for many years to come. And I think that's what family holidays can do. It binds you together, but it also can it opens awareness, particularly when the kids are young, of the size of the world, being on a plane for a day, what does that mean? Having to learn languages, being in different cultures. I mean, to give you a real example of just the sheltered, almost white culture that our family lives in. We were in London one day at the Princess Diana playground, and May's like, I'm scared to play with that dark-skinned girl. And it's like, okay, this is fascinating. Like, Maya, she's 8, or she's now 9, but 8 at the time, and she was scared to play with someone that didn't look similar to her. and we just let her find her own way. And then I can't remember if she played with that girl, but the very next day at another playground in London, I don't remember which one that was, but she found a friend, made a friend at the playground, and it was a dark-skinned girl. And Maya had a great day and made new friends and all the rest of it, and she realizes at the age of 8 or 9 that we're all exactly the same. Doesn't matter what color skin you have, we are all exactly the same, or we're all unique, but you know what I mean. And Maya had a ball, and they're the things that we don't get in our little Byron Bay bubble, and they're pretty much the exact kind of opportunities that we wanted the kids to have. Yes, you could say, well, you don't have to go to London to give them that multicultural experience. You don't, but I'm just giving you an example of some of the lessons or some of the valuable elements of that trip. And then the third highlight for myself was my dad turned 70, and it wasn't just that he turned 70, but we had a big family trip together up in Noosa. My dad and his wife Brenda, Brenda's son Kane and his family, my 2 sisters Olivia and Georgia and their families, Sarah and the kids and I, all up in Noosa for a week. 10 adults, 9 kids. You can imagine it was awesome. It was crazy. There were ups, there were downs. It was everything that a big group family holiday is. I'm sure there's been some great movies on big family trips, but gosh, there could be so many more, because there's always a wide variety of experiences when you go on a big family trip. But one thing that really stuck with me was just the gratitude I have for having a wonderful relationship with my dad, because when I'm doing my big events, so this year I'm bringing it back in May, but when I do my big event, Exceptional Life Blueprint Live, I do so each of these 8 sections, I do 4 sections on the Saturday and 4 sections on the Sunday, and we get deep and meaningful into each section. And one of the studies that I refer to in this love and relationships family section is a study done by Harvard. It was only on 125 people, but the results are really interesting. And what they did was they asked these 125 undergraduate students to rank or grade their relationship with their mum and their dad. So there were 4 options, 4 answers you could give. You either have a very close, a warm and friendly, a tolerant, or a strained and cold relationship with your mum, and you do the same thing with your dad. And I have a very close relationship with my dad and a very close relationship with my mum, which is wonderful. It has taken some work, I must admit, over the last 10 or 15 years of doing some serious personal growth, but I'm very fortunate to have a very close relationship with both my mum and my dad. And I was grateful for this, particularly when I was in Noosa at the time, because it got me thinking of the answers to this in this study. Once those 125 students had given those answers, 35 years later, the researchers went back and looked at the health of those 125 people. Now, a lot of people don't see any connection between the quality of your family relationships and the quality of your health, but hopefully this study rewires that for you, because 91% of people that had a tolerant or a strained and cold relationship with their mum had a serious medical crisis. That could be coronary heart disease, high blood pressure, ulcers, alcoholism, any type of disease, whether it's cancer, by their mid-50s. So by their midlife, so if you gather, let's say they're in their 20s when the study was done, 35 years later, they've had a medical crisis by their mid-50s. That's 91%, 9 out of 10 people that had a tolerant or strained and cold relationship with their mum. Of those that had a strained or cold relationship with their dad, it was 82%. So you can see, my notes here are that it's slightly worse health-wise to have a bad relationship with your mum than your dad. But what is interesting is that those people that had strained and cold or tolerant, strained and cold, or tolerant relationship, had twice the risk of medical crisis than those who were very close and warm and friendly with their mum in this example, because only 45% of those people had a serious medical issue. And so think about that. You might have to rewind that. I may not have explained it all that well, but essentially, if you have a great relationship with your mum and your dad, or this is the other thing, 100% of the people who had a tolerant or strained and cold relationship with both parents had a serious medical crisis. That's 100%. That's everybody that had a poor relationship with both parents. So if you have one with mum, it's highly likely you have a severe medical crisis by your mid-50s. If you have a bad relationship with your dad, it's 82% of people have a medical crisis by their mid-50s. And so my question to you is, because this is the thing that is massive, what is the relationship like with your mum and your dad? And is it, give it an answer, is it warm and friendly? Is it, let me give it, is it very close? Is it warm and friendly? Is it tolerant? Or is it strained and cold? Give your answer. But then in 2019, that goal must be to improve it if it's not very close or warm and friendly. Because if it isn't, then there's a high likelihood based on that study, and again, it's only 125 people, but on that study, you would be wise to make some changes. If you look at anecdotally, you look at people that you know, you look at people in the news, you look at people that you know that have had poor relationships with their family and what impact that had on their health later in their life. I'm telling you what, it's mind-blowing. And I share real-life examples of other people in my presentations. So there's one for you for 2019. It's a deep and meaningful one on love and relationships. Okay, so now let's go on to growth. These are the elements that bring great quality to our life. This makes life so much cooler when we're learning the things that we love to learn. I'm going to start on books. So I'm going to go on books and I'm going to go on movies. Other times I might talk about courses I've done, things that I've been learning, but I'm going to do books and movies today. As I said, I read 20 odd books. I'll probably do a whole list of all the books that I read. But some of the books that I loved, one that I have here is Richard Branson's second autobiography. This is called Finding My Virginity, and Finding My Virginity was a book that I read on the plane when I was doing a roadshow of presentations for Positive Real Estate. This is probably September 2018 after the Wellness Summit. One of those books that I bought at the airport, buy one get one half price. I remember because I remember buying it at the airport. And every time I was on the plane, I read it, and all of these flights I was on were Virgin flights, and they are my number one airline. I do love Virgin. But I was reading this book, and what it awakened within me was not only Richard Branson's humanitarian efforts and his traits, but just as I get older, I think I'm caring a little bit more about human beings. I was really quite moved by his humanitarian efforts and the things that I wanted to do in my life on a humanitarian front. And the fascinating thing about Branson's book is that it wasn't because of his book, but I found a book at the library one day. I was dropping off this book, or Barefoot Investor for Families book. I'll talk about this book in a moment, Barefoot Investor by Scott Pape. I read that finally in 2018, but I was dropping. I borrowed from the book, or Sarah had brought it in one day from the library, the Barefoot Investor for Families book. And I went to the library, I dropped it off, and as I was walking out of the library, I saw just on the shelf a book called The Barefoot Surgeon. It was one of those weird things because I just read a book on barefoot, so clearly the word barefoot was in my mind. And I read a book called The Barefoot Surgeon. This is about a man called Dr. Sanduk Ruit. Sanduk Ruit is the Fred Hollows of Nepal. If you haven't heard of Fred Hollows, he was a wonderful ophthalmologist, an eye surgeon that did wonderful work, particularly with Aboriginals that had trachoma. They had, I think it was called the Australian Trachoma Project. He went into all of the settlements, or many Aboriginal settlements that didn't have access to great health, and performed sight-saving operations and work on many Aboriginals. If I'd done more research, I would have given you all of the numbers. I do have them handy, but just not on me. That's not handy. That's somewhere, but not here. And then, anyway, Sanduk Ruit got to know Fred Hollows, and it's just an inspirational book. It absolutely moved me. Again, from a humanitarian level, just what Sanduk Ruit did and does, is he goes into the villages of Nepal and other developing nations where they don't have access to health practitioners, and he goes in with very simple tools and restores the sight to people in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. He's Nepal's first ophthalmologist. He grew up in poverty, is putting it lightly, and he became one of the world's leading ophthalmologists. And now he has helped restore sight to over 100,000 men, women, and children, and that has then improved every one of those people's villages, because everyone that in those developing nations that is blind needs to be cared for by an able-bodied person, and that takes that able-bodied person out of the local economy and out of the community life and the village. Anyway, He's a phenomenal man. And so I read The Barefoot Surgeon, which was definitely one of my highlight books of the year. I interviewed Dr. Sanduk Ruit on 100 Not Out, which definitely probably was my highlight interview of the year. Although having said that, there were some pretty other awesome ones, Holocaust survivors and World War II survivors and the rest. But then I suppose if I talk about the Holocaust, the third best book I read for the year, this is in no particular order, but another one of the three great books I read in 2018 was called The Tattooist of Auschwitz. This is a book written by Heather Morris. Absolutely phenomenal book. True story, which is just, again, fascinating. And this is the tale of Lali and the fact that he was the tattooist of Auschwitz, and not just the harrowing experiences that he had, but also the fact that he fell in love in Auschwitz. And it does have as Holocaust stories can, it does have a really happy ending. And so anyway, phenomenal book. So they're my three books, top three books: Barefoot Surgeon, Finding My Virginity by Richard Branson, and The Tattooist of Auschwitz. They are the three for the year. Movies. Number one movie of the year, Greatest Showman, with Hugh Jackman, Zac Efron, Zendaya, Michelle Williams. By far, I saw it on the plane on the way over to Europe. Moved me in many ways, and I just became obsessed with it. Honestly, for Christmas, I got Maya, not Sarah. Sarah's sick of it because the soundtrack's playing all the time in the Pierce house. But I got Maya, like the hardcover companion book. I got her the Easy Piano book, which I'm also going to play this year. What else? The CD album. Just stream the movie. But I took the kids to the sing-along concert, which was here in Brunswick Heads at the Brunswick Picture House. I had a sing-along where you're watching the movie, but everyone's singing to the songs as well. Anyway, love it. I played the songs at the Wellness Summit, used it as part of the intro to the Wellness Summit. Anyway, definitely movie of the year. But I said at the beginning there were movies that I hadn't watched prior to 2018 that you would just think I was ridiculous for not watching. One of them was Gladiator. I'd never seen Gladiator with Russell Crowe. I watched Schindler's List, which it was 26 years old now, 25 year anniversary in 2018. But it was a movie that I just never watched for any number of reasons. But I watched it in 2018. It was absolutely powerful. Probably the most powerful movie, not probably, definitely the most powerful movie I watched in 2018. Liam Neeson playing Oscar Schindler and Ralph Fiennes playing Goat. Anyway, the commander, the commandant. He is. They're both phenomenal roles. A phenomenal movie. You learn so much about the Holocaust watching that movie as well. And survivors, I interviewed Selena Biniaz, who is a Holocaust survivor. She was part of Schindler's List, which was 1,100 people, 800 men, 300 women. I read the book, Thomas Keneally's Schindler's List, Schindler's Ark book in 2018, which the movie was based on. So massive credit to Thomas Keneally, a great Australian, for really setting in motion all that Schindler's List then went on to create for the world as well. But if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. It will move you. You will cry your eyes out. You will wonder and worry about humanity. But a very powerful book, a very powerful movie, may I say. I watched Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio. Forget the man that's based on, but that's a real story. That is absolutely fascinating. Loved that movie. As well. 2019 movies that I am going to watch. These are some movies that, again, I haven't seen, which I'm determined to watch. Apocalypse Now. I'm halfway through it. I haven't finished it. Escape from Alcatraz, Master and Commander with Russell Crowe, The Shack. I listened to a podcast the other day with Oprah, one of my favourite podcasts, the Super Soul Sessions. I forget the name of the author of The Shack, but it's also a movie. I'm going to watch The Shack. I'm going to watch The Bodyguard because I've never seen that. I've never seen Ghost, believe it or not. I'm going to watch Ghost. I'll have to watch that with Sarah, won't I? I'll watch The Hunger Games because I've never seen it, and it's just something that I'm curious in. Legends of the Fall. Do you remember that with Brad Pitt? I haven't seen that. And Anthony Hopkins. I watched Remains of the Day in 2018 as well, which is also a great film. A lot of these are on Netflix. Dunkirk, which again has World War II connections. I'm very interested in World War II, so I'll be watching movies on World War II, for some reason it's struck something within me. Obviously the Holocaust is a massive part of that, but I don't think I've ever really understood how many countries were connected and a part of World War II. It almost impacted every single country, hence why it's called a world war. But I want to learn more about that, because I think there's a lot of stories and lessons of what it takes to be an exceptional human being in learning about World War II. I had no interest in it at school days. I don't think they teach it very well in many schools, but for me, that's a part of 2019. Books I'm reading at the moment, I Am Malala. I'll put that in the February podcast. She's recently been out to Australia. I'm also reading at the moment The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Again, I'll share more about that in the next podcast. And The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. That is on the reading list for 2019. We've got 2 sections to go. Let's move on to wealth. 2018 for me was all about The Barefoot Investor. That was the wealth book of the year for me. I'd resisted it for unknown reasons. Well, I do know. I'll tell you one in a moment. But I had resisted it for many years. And I was at one of my best mates' houses, Greg Monahan, in Melbourne last year. I think it was March, because it was definitely before I went to Europe. And we got talking about Barefoot Investor. Greg has done incredibly well in his professional life, in all areas of his life. Greg does live an exceptional life. He's done very well in his business. He's a great lawyer. He has co-founded a wonderful yoga studio, or multiple yoga studios, called Light Space Yoga, with his lovely wife Claire and Claire's mum Susan. But we were talking about just all things wealth and business and the rest. And Greg was telling me how much of a massive fan he was of The Barefoot Investor. And you know when someone, or when you've heard something over and over and over again, and you're like, nah, and then you hear it again, and it's like, all right, if I hear that one more time and I haven't done anything about it, I'll spew up. So it was time for me to read The Barefoot Investor. And like many books or many things that you resist, you then absorb it and you go, I can't believe I was resisting this. And when I think about it, I think the reason why I resisted Scott Pape was because when I was working in the media, when I used to work at SEN Radio and Channel 9, and he was probably just beginning to make a name for himself in the media, through no fault of Scott Pape's, but he was bashed a bit in the media. People kind of disrespected him, probably because of his age more than anything, which is terrible, because he's probably a similar age to me, if not a little bit older. And he wasn't, I think, highly respected, and I think I probably bought into that lack of respect, which again doesn't make any practical sense, but on a society herd mentality, I probably bought into it. So Scott Pape, his house burned down in the Black Saturday bushfires. I was having my Bucks Day on Black Saturday, which Greg Monahan was there, and Scott Pape, his house burned down on the same day. And his story, pick it up from then on, is absolutely remarkable. But the principles that he shares, the way I talk about it is that every wealth book that I've read, and I've got, there's a bookshelf behind you here, and there's Money by Tony Robbins, there's The Richest Man in Babylon, there is Bob Proctor's You Were Born to Be Rich, The Millionaire Mind, Cash Flow Quadrant. I'm just seeing all of the wealth books that I have in there. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Anyway, all of the books, a lot of them are awesome. Pretty much all of them are awesome. But this one's Australian, and this one says all of the same things as all of the other great books, particularly the timeless ones, and it does it in a way that you can apply, whether it's the bank accounts. He's a massive fan of ING. The big thing about Scott Pape is he's not what's the word? He's not conflicted. He doesn't have any commercial relationships with any of the products or services he recommends. So from time to time, he'll change his recommendation because he's just a punter like you and I, trying to do his best financially. He talks about making things like a Mojo account. I sold my bike, which I said earlier. And look, we've had money tucked away, but it's just, I like the fact that you call it Mojo, so it was like, his big philosophy is sell the stuff. We talk about in this health and wellness movement about decluttering. Well, if you're going to declutter, put it on Gumtree and put that money into a Mojo account. Have a portion, a good amount of money in there. I think the recommendation is $2,000. But anyway, just whatever the amount is for you, where you never have to actually truly worry about a dollar, about money. And these are just simple principles, but they're all said in different ways in the other books that I refer to. But there's something about, personally for me, there's something about it being Australian, which I have really quite embraced a whole lot more. And so he's been great for our financial organisation. The philosophy has really always been there in our family, but the organisation of it all, the practicalities of it have been a lot more just stronger or better. But I also sold my iMac, all because of watching The Barefoot Investor or reading it, because I was hardly using it. So I had an iMac on this desk, and I sold it before we went to Europe, and didn't spend it on Europe, but just chucked it into the Mojo account. I also did I've got the Smile account, the Splurge account, the Blow account, all this stuff which is in Barefoot Investor. So if finances for you is a big deal, and who is it not a big deal for? But if it's a big deal and you feel like you're struggling with it, it's so simple. It's not also always easy to implement. You might have to change a lot of your bank accounts over. I know we did. That can take some effort. But if you really want to have a great financial footing, you don't have to earn millions of bucks, but financial organization goes a really long way into doing a really good job with your financial wealth. Then I highly recommend Barefoot Investor for 2019. And then if you've got kids, do also get the Barefoot Investor for families, because the kids now get pocket money. They've got a give, a spend, and a save jar. They've got 3 jobs that they do every week. I pay them 50 cents per year they've been born. So May's 9, she gets $4.50 a week. Darby's 6, he gets $3 a week. Tommy's not into it yet. He's 2.5. We'll get him on the payroll shortly. So I recommend that for families, for your wealth in 2019. All right, 7 down. Let's do Spirit. Now, this one's it's a bit icky, the thing I want to talk about for Spirit, reflecting on 2018. It came largely at the end of the year, but the topic I want to discuss, which comes up a lot in my life, I'm so conscious and aware of it. It's the consequence of lying. And I mean telling a mistruth, lying, not lying down, lying, just not telling the truth. In 2006, Sarah and I were attending an event. It was a leadership event, I'm pretty sure, in San Diego. We listened to a presentation by a man called Gary King. It was at a Tony Robbins event, and Gary King gave a presentation on truth. And his statement was, there is no such thing as an inconsequential lie. And that statement, that mantra, has lived with me ever since. There is no such thing as an inconsequential lie. Any lie you tell, white lie, black lie, any color lie that you have for it, always has a consequence. Now, I love lying. I love lying. You know when I love lying? When I'm doing a surprise for someone. If it's a surprise party, a surprise gift, something I want to give you, I'll lie through my teeth to make sure that you don't find out what it is. I hate giving the surprise away. So many people are like, oh, you're asking me questions about the surprise. Just lie through your teeth so that you don't give them any idea that there's a surprise coming. They're the best lies ever. Call them white lies, call them whatever you like. But there's a consequence to the lies. There's heaps of consequences. They can all go pear-shaped in the pursuit of the surprise, whatever. But I want you to drill into your brain that there is no such thing as an inconsequential lie. There is no lie you can tell that has zero consequence. My mum and I have arguments about this all the time, because on the flip side of that, as my mum likes to say, on a need-to-know basis, they don't need to know. And if you are not telling the truth, or if you are withholding information, are you lying? And that's a great dinner party conversation. My answer is yes. My belief is yes. And let me give you an example why. Over the Christmas period, if you know your personal growth, or if you're interested in personal growth, you may have heard of a man called John of God. Now, John of God has been interviewed by Oprah. He has been, Wayne Dyer has been a famous client of his. He has worked on millions, literally millions of people around the world through his various healing methods. And those various healing methods include spiritual surgery. Now, sometimes that surgery can literally be performing surgery on people without any anesthetic. And there's YouTube videos that show all of this. There's also, what is it called? Sacred surgery or spiritual surgery, where, you might be in Melbourne and he's in Brazil, and you go to bed one night and you take some passion flower or herbal remedy that he suggests, and you go to bed, and whilst you're asleep, he performs the surgery, and you wake up and you feel completely different. Anyway, what he does is not the important part here. The important part is here, he has had up until Christmas an incredibly strong, powerful, influential, and loved identity and respect in the personal growth world. He has been lauded and praised by powerful people. Oprah Winfrey doesn't interview people that she thinks are peanuts. It's her identity and reputation that is on the line. And then what happens at Christmas? John of God, who grew up in poverty in Brazil, found out at about the age of 16 that he had supernatural powers, was charged with, I better be careful here, 300 women complained of sexual misconduct by John of God. Now, he has been charged. I just don't want to say the charge because I'm always conscious of this as a journalist for legal reasons. I don't want to get it wrong. I'm just wondering here if I've got it here in my notes. He's handed himself into police, but it's for sexual misconduct charges. I can definitely say that. What I invite you to do, and I'll put links in here, this is just to understand the consequences of lies. For 300 women to come forward, let's just say that even half of those allegations come to be true. Don't you think there's a consequence to the lies that have been told? His own daughter has come forward and talked about, and she has alleged that she has been raped by her dad for many years. She no longer obviously lives with her dad. But I want you to be really clear here. Sexual misconduct to a man that has been performing spiritual healing to thousands, hundreds of thousands of people for many, many years. Lies catch up with you. Lies catch up with you. And there are many other examples, and it almost seems a bit, cruel's not the word. It's not always wise to pick out individuals, but sometimes I think it's really important. There are famous people that have told lies to the tax office that then end up in the paper. If you want to find out the consequences to people's lies, just open the paper. You'll see people in court. There are so many examples. It's mind-boggling. But again, for the sake of this public podcast, it's probably not wise for me to single out too many people. But what I want you to really drill into your own mind is, are you lying? Are you telling white lies? Are you telling little lies? Are you telling little fibs? Are you telling big lies? Are you saying to your husband or wife that you love them, but you actually don't love them anymore? That's a lie. And there's a consequence to the lie. People feel it. There are consequences. It's really important to get clear on how truthful you are being. And for my own definition, not telling the truth is also telling a lie as well. Withholding the truth is lying as well. Now that doesn't mean you have to go up and tell everyone whose clothing choice you disagree with that you don't like it. You don't have to be Jim Carrey and lie a liar. What I'm saying is that there are consequences, and to be really clear on the truth that you're telling and the truth that you're withholding. All right. That's a lot. That's over an hour, I reckon, on this return podcast of Your Exceptional Life. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I'm not expecting that you've listened to this in one hit, but if you have, fantastic. Again, I really hope that you found benefit in it. I really hope that you do all of the answer all the questions that I've asked of you here. Go through each of those areas again. Life purpose, movement, social life, your nutrition, your love and relationships, your growth, your wealth, and your spirit, your soul, your faith. They're all absolutely vital to your exceptional life. And so I think it's really important that as a community, as a society, as a species, that we pay homage to all 8 areas of our life, and that we rise from mediocre to magnificent in each area of our life. Please feel free to connect with me. Best way is really old-fashioned email, to be frank. That's marcus@thewellnesscouch.com. I am on social media. I'm just not the best at it. I don't spend a lot of time there, is more to the point. I'm at Marcus D. Pierce on Facebook and Instagram. I just question if it's real deep and meaningful engagement, because it's far easier, or it's far better if you've got a deep and meaningful question or comment you want to make. You're probably not going to want to make it on social, so you're probably just better off sending me an email. If you've got something that you want to share with me, please do over email. All right, I think that's it for me. I really want to thank you for being part of this return episode of Your Exceptional Life. Please, if you haven't already, live your exceptional life according to those 8 areas of your life. Make it a priority for 2019 and beyond. And until next time, continue to live your exceptional life. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this episode. I've got 2 things for you. If you want to do this exceptional life blueprint process in a more structured format than listening to a podcast, I have a free short course called Mediocre to Magnificent, which takes you through each of these 8 areas of your life. That again, your life purpose, your movement, your social life, your nutrition, love and relationships, your growth, your wealth, and your spirit. Now, this course has been completed by thousands of people in over 80 countries worldwide, and even though I made it around 3 years ago, I still get messages from people today telling me how much empowerment it has brought to their lives. So again, if you want it in a structured format, it goes for around 2 hours. You got worksheets, videos, audio, all the rest of it. It's called Mediocre to Magnificent, and it is over at marcuspearce.com.au/magnificent. That is my name, marcuspearce.com.au. That's with an E, not an I, /magnificent. Now, if you do want to up level a notch, then in my mind, nothing beats in real life. My personal opinion is that the big decisions in life happen at things like live events. That's away from the daily grind of domestic life. And yes, no matter how much you love your life, there are times when it does feel like a grind. Now, in my country of Australia, Byron Bay is the epitome of getting away from the daily grind and creating clarity in your life. It also happens to be my hometown, and so I'm biased when I choose the location of my signature event, Exceptional Life Blueprint Live. ELB Live is a 2-day event that gets into the deep and meaningfuls of each of the 8 areas of life. Now, on the Saturday, we work on your life purpose, movement, social life, and nutrition. And then on the Sunday, we do family, growth, wealth, and spirit. So it's 2 jam-packed, awesome days of inspiration and empowerment. And what's best is you do it alongside 100 plus like-minded legends, all determined to live their exceptional life. You do it in the most easterly town of Australia, full of breathtaking views, food, beaches, and a whole lot more. This year's event takes place on Saturday, May 18 and Sunday, May 19 at the iconic Byron Theatre in Byron Bay. So again, if you are ready to make 2019 your year for exceptional, then go over to marcuspearce.com.au/Byron Bay. That's marcuspearce.com.au/Byron Bay. That's BYRON Bay. You'll see all the details there. Look forward to having you in Byron Bay if you choose to come along. And until next time, as always, continue to live your exceptional life.